Okay, so we're talking about France today and what they're up to after World War One. One of the biggest priorities for France was not letting what happened in World War One happen again. They're always concerned about Germany, and they want to harshly enforce that Treaty of Versailles that ends World War One and puts Germany in a bad spot. And remember, one of the biggest things that was part of the Treaty of Versailles was payment, war reparations, either in money backed by gold or in resources that were of value. And very quickly, it didn't take long for Germany to struggle in making those repayments. Germany had to take care of its own citizens, and it was having a hard time keeping up with the payments. And France decided in 1923 that they were going to put the screws to Germany. They literally send in the military into the Ruhr Valley. And the Ruhr Valley is right here. You see, this is Germany. The little red zone is the Ruhr Valley. It's an area where there was a lot of factories and resources available, and ultimately it was one of the more productive parts of Germany. So the French move in and occupy the Ruhr Valley because they decided that if Germany won't repay them willingly, they were going to go in and take it. And this gets pretty aggressive. The French military, you see that they show up with infantry soldiers right here. They roll tanks through the area. You can see that this infantry soldier is standing guard of resources that they're putting on rail cars that they're going to ship back to France on their own. This is a pretty serious matter, and people are rightfully concerned that this could spark another war. Germany's obviously not thrilled about this, but France says, listen, you started the war, you have to pay for the war, and since you're not making the payments, we're going to come in and help make them for you. This occupation of the Ruhr Valley by the French military is going to last a couple of years. It's going to take a while before they negotiate an agreement to get the French out of there. Now, not only are they going to occupy the Ruhr Valley, but they're going to maintain inspections of Germany to make sure they're complying with the treaty, especially the parts about having a very limited military. So France is genuinely fearful of Germany. They don't want them to rearm. They don't want Germany to have a position of significance on the European continent, and they're going to do everything they can to make sure that their will, their policy, their goals are going to come to fruition. Now, aside from the inspections, the occupation of the Ruhr Valley, France is going to find itself a little bit on an island here. When it comes to treaty enforcement, they wanted assistance from Great Britain. Great Britain and particularly the United States are the two other major allies after the war. And with Britain, they said, hey, I thought you guys would be interested in helping punish Germany since they were trying to rival you for power. And Great Britain isn't really interested in being that harsh on Germany because deep down, they don't want France having that much power either. So they're like, hey, France, we're not really going to put the screws to the Germans like you are. Plus, Great Britain is concerned about its own position in world affairs. And they don't want France dominating the European continent any more than they want Germany dominating the European continent. Plus, Britain has its own goals and its own priorities, and so they're not really interested in helping the French be that harsh on the Germans. Okay? Now, France is also concerned about what's going to happen in the future. They think, hey, World War I was an absolute mess with that trench warfare. And what we're going to do to prepare for this is we're going to build something called the Maginot Line. You can see here the red line along the German border with France, and of course some on the Belgian border too. These are fortifications, these massive forts that they're going to build to secure their border and to make sure that even if Germany is able to rearm in the future, if Germany's going to ever attack them again, it would be pointless because this system of forts would be like a defensive barrier. And they thought, listen, the lessons we learned from World War One, especially with trench warfare, is you're going to be in the same place for a long time, and we don't want the nasty conditions of those trenches again. So we'd like to avoid that if all possible. Now, notice some other really interesting things here. The strong fortifications are on the direct German and French border, and that's where they're going to put more of these forts. It's like a 900-mile-long border, but they're going to put the strongest fortifications, the most frequent ones, and it's about every mile or so. Those are going to go along that area. Now, the lighter fortifications are along the Belgian border, and there's reasons for this. One of which is Belgium is your ally, and you don't really want to put a strong system of fortifications on that border because it might send the wrong message. Not only that, but a lot of the area in Belgium is thick, dense, forested area. And they thought that if Germany ever invaded again, they'd have a hard time getting things like tanks through there. And invading Belgium would also give them time, the French time, to organize a resistance. So they're not feeling too bad about it. But there's a problem with that Maginot Line. One of the great advantages that the French and the British had in World War I is that for a big bulk of the war, it was a two-front war. You had Britain and France on one side of Germany and Russia on the other. And so that was something that worked out in their favor. But here's the thing. By building this Maginot Line, this defense system, everybody in Eastern Europe on the other side of Germany, they see France as sending kind of a message that we're worried about our own defense, not really the defense of everybody else. And this Maginot Line is pretty substantial. If you take a look at it here, you see the planning of what it's like inside one of these little fortresses, and they've got these littered all along the border. And so it's a really elaborate affair. They spend a lot of time and a lot of money constructing these and making them self-sufficient, and they could hold out in these fortresses and these bunkers for quite some time. You see they're loaded with guns. They're at an elevated position, which always gives you an advantage in warfare. They've got large supplies of food and water that they're going to put in there, ventilation systems. This is a place where they're going to be able to store lots of weapons, and they could hold out for a long time even if they were surrounded. Okay, and you see at the bottom of it too, it shows you what they put in front of these barriers, so it would be really difficult getting through. You had things that were designed like barbed wire, designed to stop people from moving through. You had anti-tank guards there as well, like think of giant concrete pillars sticking out of the ground to prevent tanks from driving through them. You see the outside of one here too. It's like a little miniature fortress. This is another good shot. This is the entrance on the back side of the fort. And of course, it looks like almost like a castle, which is kind of the vibe that I think they're going for. All right, so that Maginot Line is going to be a defensive barrier against Germany. So they're trying to secure themselves. But France has another problem, too. They owe a substantial amount of money to the United States from World War I. And you can see right here, along with Great Britain, they owe in the billions of dollars. These numbers are measured in millions of dollars per year. And each year, they're going to have a significant sum of money that they owe to the United States. And remember, we mentioned this a little bit prior, but France really thought, along with Great Britain, that America should forgive these war debts because they're like, listen, we paid for the war in blood, and our land was absolutely devastated. France lost a whole generation of young men. They're going to have a problem in terms of reestablishing their population as well. This is a difficult spot for them to be in, and they're very annoyed at the United States for forcing them to repay these loans, but America will not relent. They're owed a substantial amount of money from their allies, and they have no plans on giving in. Now that puts a pinch on France here as well, because they realize that if they're going to be contracted to pay these loans back to the United States, that puts them in a difficult economic spot. They have problems providing services for their own citizens if they've got money outgoing to the United States.